Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to take a look at the really exciting topic of the audio panel. Now the reason I bring up the audio panel is one of the aircraft that have been flying recently in the real world has been having some issues with the audio panel. So I thought it'd be kind of a fun thing to just take a couple moments to sort of show you sort of how it works, as well as how you can use it, especially in a flight simulator environment. So let's go down and take a look. So what is the audio panel? It's basically going to be a collection of buttons that allows you to turn on and off different audio inputs and outputs on your aircraft. The basic fundamentals is if you have a mark above something, that means it is turned on. Now in this upper panel up here, starting at the top, and again we'll take a look at the one in the 172 in a minute, anything that's on this side is what we're talking through. So for example, if I select on COM 2, that would mean I'm now speaking through COM 2. If I press COM 3, which doesn't work on this particular aircraft, I'd be now speaking through COM number 3. So where this gets kind of interesting is if I wanted to, I could theoretically press COM 1 and then be listening on both COM 1 and COM 2 at the same time. Now, one of the rules with the audio panel is you have to listen to the thing you're talking to. So I can't turn on COM 2 and shut off COM 1. That's simply not a possibility. Now, one of the things they did in Flight Sim, which I think is kind of a neat little touch, is if you bring up the ATC panel, your COM 1 and COM 2 are actually right here. And you'll notice if I change between these two different positions, that it'll actually automatically swap them for you so that you can listen to the other one. Now, in the real world, I typically use COM 2 for the purposes of getting ATIS information. So what I would do is actually set my ATIS frequency into COM 2 so that I could listen to it when I wanted to listen to it. So I'm in Dulles Tower here. Again, we could select it, again, depending on what I'm trying to achieve here. But since it won't let me do ATIS on this particular airport, I'm not worried about it too much. Now below that, you have a couple other options. You have PA, which is public address system. If you press this button, I can hold another button. Attention passengers, attention. No, you wouldn't do anything like that. You have the speaker, which would be the cabin speaker. In the old days, we didn't wear headphones, so you'd literally have a speaker. Typically, that speaker would be located above your head, depending on the model of the airplane that you're listening to. So what we can do is actually turn the speaker on, and we could turn on COM 2, and then you can listen to what's going on there. And of course, like I said, you have a passenger address system. Coming down from here, we have the marker mute and the high sensitivity button. Now, as you probably know, when you're coming in for a landing on an ILS approach, you might hear a beeping sound and see a blinking light. Those are simply the outer, inner, and middle markers. This option here allows you to mute it, as well as turn it up to maximum sensitivity. If you turn both of these on at the same time, the probability of seeing that little marker light going off is going to be pretty darn aggressive. Below that, we have a couple other options, and this is primarily for the purposes of identifying different sources for navigational information. DME, if we have a DME selected, we'll go ahead and play the beeps, the Morse code identifier of that station. Nav1 and Nav2 are going to be exactly the same in that regard. And then ADF, of course, is also going to provide us with the tone of the ADF. Now, one of the fun things we did in the old days, of course, is we turned on the ADF audio and then changed to AM radio, and we'd listen to those AM radio stations while we're flying. It's a good way to catch the ball game, kind of a thing like that. Below that, you're going to have a couple other options depending on the type of aircraft. You have, again, manual sequence option. You have the play, which is exactly what you think it is in the event that you have something plugged in that you can change the tunes on. And then we have this thing called isolation. This is a very interesting option, and I'm sure in Flight Sim it does absolutely nothing, but it's actually really useful for us. What it does is it allows us to isolate the system so that only the people talking can be heard. Now, one of the problems you always struggle with flying with passengers, I got 6 people or 4 people in the back seat in this plane, is they're going to be chatting away when you need to talk on the radio. So what you could do is you can come down here and go boop and instantaneously isolate them so you can still talk to the people on the radio, but the folks in the back seat basically can't even hear each other. Now, the interesting thing is, even though this all seems very complicated, it's the exact same format when you move on to airliners. The 787. Sweet. So let's go pop down to this one and see that it's the exact same concept. That's if I can move my head properly here. Perfect. So you can see coming on down here that you have basically the same philosophy. The only thing that makes it a little bit different now is you have the option to select versus the option to hear. So in this case, what you probably observe is we have the VHF selected and our volume of that is all the way up. If I were to switch over to my center, I'm talking on that one, and I can sit here and turn that audio up all the way if I want to be able to listen to it. So now where this gets kind of interesting is, notice on this aircraft you have multiple radios, but the way that they programmed it is they're all sort of linked to each other. You also have a couple extra things that are kind of fun. If you want to talk to the flight crew when they call you on the phone, you've got the cabin. Of course, you have your PA if you need to. You also have 2 high-frequency radios as well as a sat phone option. But again, it's the exact same philosophy here. When I want to pick a certain tone, I can simply go ahead and click on it and then be able to listen to it directly. Now, what happens when you want to listen to the navigational sounds so that we can identify that we're on the correct station? You'll notice what they've done here is they programmed that option into this switch right here. What would happen is you click the switch over to the VOR that you want to listen to, or ADF, and then you could turn up its volume directly so you could listen to it. Likewise, the marker audio could be selected with this little handle here. Now, what you're probably observing here is as I hold my mouse over, we get this little nasty inoperative piece here. So they made it a little more difficult for us. The good news and the thing that we have going for us in this particular aircraft is if we do select a particular navigational radio position, for example, if we want to come over here, pop over to our navigational radio. Let's say we want to go ahead and pick a VOR. We'll do 114.9, which is pretty, actually, which is a 115.60. It's right next to us. We can actually dial that in, and what it will do is it'll actually tell you which particular VFR or VOR station, I should say, that is identified in that particular place. Meaning when we switch over to that mode, we'll now be able to identify where it is without actually having to listen to its identification for the purposes of listening on those particular frequencies. Now, if you're in a slightly different aircraft, things will be a little bit different, especially when you move on to glass cockpits like we have here in the citation longitude. Now what you're going to have to do is you're actually going to have to go to the audio and radios panels. Actually, I would float my head down here. You're going to notice you have this button that says audio and radios. This is the exact same concept. The difference here is that it's just digital. So for example, if I wanted to listen to the nav1, I could tap on that. If I wanted to listen to nav2, I could tap on that one directly. Now where this one comes in kind of handy is if I scroll down here, you have the option to go ahead and set your marquee audio. You can also set your ADF audio if you need to and control the volumes for those directly. One thing you got to watch out for in this particular version, depending on what update of the Ju 3000 you have here, is you can actually swap which one you're going to be listening to at the top here and actually monitor one or both at the same time. Likewise, if you want to ident for this, you have to press that button rather than going through that separate section. So one of the ways they modeled this is they kind of put those things in here as if it was there before, but like I said, it's a little bit awkward to set it in a G3000 and you don't quite have that fine control that you have in some of those other aircraft. Hopefully you found this video interesting. Like I said, a couple people were asking some questions about that, and I've had some interesting real-world experience with it, so I thought it might be worthwhile. For those of you who are VATSIM fans, you probably are very, very familiar with those options because you're using them all the time for the purposes of being able to kind of tune certain radios in and out, maybe listen to approach on one radio, maybe you're listening to tower on a different radio. Completely depends on your particular scenario. But other than that, enjoy.